in certain activities, but then the result happens to be a negative kind of result. It happens to be a negative or suffering kind of result. So due to that, the infallibility of karma is explained. So therefore, it's saying that with regard to the fact that karma is not deceptive, so if one thinks that karma is deceptive, that one will be able to gain a positive result, whereas one is not. So in order to counteract that view, it is explained that karma is infallible with regard to this working. As in like positive cause giving rise to positive results and so.
Tanda ani phage tanda demba ki ji shi du zane lu mi lu ki ji shi di ani ngso le tong du zane ta di chosi re sin tong de ji ine chosi khona ga le zega ju du zane ani khasan da ban ji choba da chashi khayang chosi nye me de di ji du zane ani ngwe bi ne chu la nang chul di re nang chul la chosi du s di re ani nang chu di pha sha ni ne chu kan la pha chim ba yin na chosi sha du go ma 디지털 내주 나와는 시 매번 인상은 류바스.
So, with respect to here talking about ultimate truth being non-deceptive, well, when we look for, like for example, a table appears to us, a table appears to our awareness, and then when we look for the table, among its parts, among the collection of the parts, as separate from the parts, we do not find a table. So that was explained early on. So in reality, what it is that there's a mode of appearance of the table, so the table does appear, but if we were to leave aside the mode of appearance of the table from with regard to its mode of existence, the way it exists, it cannot be found. So therefore, the table is deceptive here because from the point of view of its appearance and its actual mode of existence, there is a discrepancy.
근데 조지고 님이 로출버들 나와 대점기 큰 오조 종이지. 제가 디인디 전에 콜루어레스.
So therefore, since in reality the table is not there, therefore we say that it's only from the perspective of the conceptual consciousness thinking this is a table. So from that perspective, the nature of the table is complete from the perspective of that awareness. But therefore it is only from the point of view of that consciousness, so therefore it's a mistake. We're mistaken with regard to the consciousness, with regard to that table. We say we're mistaken with regard to it. So talking from that perspective, talking from the point of view of that way of explaining this, then we would say that also the law of karma is deceptive. From that perspective, we speak of karma as being deceptive.
이네 딘지기 이네 또베 따바 점 레디어리 이네 매바 말이 요레 시용디 예바딜레 이네 리니체 이게 리치 인 대바체 타니기 원도체 다 디다워 데코나니나 마치비 데코나니나 마치비 시비는 주원도 제네 아니야 예바지다 매바 가서 대바 인기지다 마인기지 양니체요 딘지 원도 집에 레디디야 대바차고 다 레미교월 때는 대화 용거리세디 미테버체 미교월 때는 동해 용거리세디 대바차고 디원도 집
So saying that phenomena or something being merely imputed. So here it doesn't mean it is non-existent, but it exists. So, but when we talk about phenomena being existing merely by way of convention, so from the point of view of an awareness, from awareness that does not investigate the ultimate. So when we talk about being merely imputed, we're talking about an awareness that does not investigate the ultimate. We can talk about something being true and not true. In other words, existent or not existent, or true or not true. So from the point of view, for example, what would an example of something that is true would be the working of karma. So the working of karma that on the basis stresses that in dependence on a positive action, one will experience happiness, and in dependence on a negative action, one will experience suffering. So an example of something that is merely imputed but that is not true would be saying that in dependence on a positive action, one experiences suffering, and in dependence on a negative action, as a consequence of that, one experiences happiness. That would be an example of something that is not true.
야나면은 되지다나 되도 아니 다 슈구디 치벌 나행이 다 세부 통으로 봐. 다 슈구디 세부 인바디 매바래. 아니 그 대바 인술 큐니 요마래 유출 자원이 요마래. 지 다체.
덴바나 유출니가. 나세. So, or another example, so taking this white piece of paper, Geshe-la raised the white piece of paper, saying for a person who has jaundice, to whom this paper appears as yellow, well, here, from the point of view of such a yellow paper, there's no way in which that is true, and there's no way in which that is existent. So there's no way in which we can say this is a true yellow paper and an existent yellow paper.
아니 밀람 기타 멜론난기 숭니 라바이나 유바레 이네 코 대바 인당 요마레 즈바이 파시그레
So then, taking it on a different level, on a second level, we're talking about the object, a dream object. So the dream object, like a dream horse, or the reflection of a face in a mirror, well, those two are not true. Those two are not true. So the reflection of a face in a mirror and the dream object are not true.
제네 리바 숨바데다 쪽지들이 유바레 아니 코 대기다바나시 대권한이라 마시비 시베기 토네 기지 시바이나 낭출고원도 제나 대바레 대권한이라 제비 시베기 아니 파게 낭출기 토네 기지 시오도 전에 그 대바 말해
So then on the third type of level, here when we speak about a table exists, and from the perspective of a mind that does not investigate reality, that does not investigate the ultimate truth, then this table is true. But from the perspective of a mind that investigates the ultimate, there is no table. So from the perspective therefore of an awareness which does not investigate the ultimate truth, so that consciousness, the table is true.
산제 기타 단 첸다 기지시 오는데 남체 납션 되게 최근에 무슨 게 제가 산제 기타 조지시에디 신앙 레슬라로 신앙 요거네 아니 조지 나와디 미시라 조지 나와디 시비고네 조지시 모두 조지 테라시에 민두라로 오나다 나와디 테라시기베스 에 나와디 군제데 마마르베스 디르와다
아니 지금 해가시고 군주는 나와서 여러 갔습니다.
레다 디토레다 테가시 군주에 나와시는 요만에 라차라 제가 나와디 테가시 마르베스 이제들
So one question is with regard to conventional phenomena. So conventional phenomena with regard to, for example, so she gave an explanation. She gave an explanation of. So going back to the question, so her question is with regard to conventional truths, they do not appear straightforwardly to a Buddha. They do not appear straightforwardly to the omniscient mind of a Buddha. So she had also specified the sense consciousnesses and so forth, but Geshe-la said no, not necessarily talk of those. So all conventional truths do not appear straightforwardly to the mind of a Buddha. But what about the appearances of these conventional truths? Do they not appear in a straightforward fashion to the continuum of a Buddha without having to appear to another sentient being, but as a personal kind of appearance, could they appear to the consciousness of a Buddha?
That the Nawa the Tio the Tamanashi, any Toba Lole Tio the Tanshora. Josie the Josie Timbi Logil, now you gone sees. And Lodi Yanka decides. Tio the Chibotan Shora.
So the same question can be asked not just from the point of view of the appearance, but likewise from the point of view of the consciousness that perceives the conventional truth, the consciousness in the continuum of the sentient being that perceives the conventional truth. Does that consciousness, is that a straight appearance to the Buddha? Is that a straightforward appearance to the Buddha? So it doesn't need to just be the appearance itself. We can also talk of the mind in the continuum of a sentient being.
And the Nella and the Langer, like General Langer, Sanji Kinsuki Shomari, Josie D. That Simji Charangi Nashinaji Lochi, now some remari. Dirva. That now some ina, and now Koraya Kare, now some remari. Shenda Laura, Tanya with some Shenda Rally Malasan, Koran, Shella Nawa. Korama English and Dutch, now some Koran Modi, Diro. And nowadi, Yakare, Shena now some ray, and winner to body. Nowadi, Diro. The Koran and Tobetaba some ray. And Toba Koran Kare, Tobetaba some ray, and winner to body. Kare.
So Geshe was saying, before I answer this, I can ask you a question. So I can ask you a question from the point of view of the table, for example. So this table is just an appearance to your mind. This table just appears to your mind. So therefore, this is something merely imputed. It's just a mere appearance to a consciousness. What about the appearance of the table? Is that not only, isn't that just also merely an appearance, merely an appearance to an awareness? So it depends on a conventional, on a valid cognizer of convention. It appears to such a mind without existing from its own side. Don't we have to say that? That it is just from the perspective of appearance to another awareness without existing from its own side. So likewise, with regard to the conceptual consciousness, so everything is merely imputed. It is a mere appearance. It is merely imputed by a conceptual consciousness. What about that conceptual consciousness? That also doesn't exist from its own side. That is also merely imputed. Isn't that right?
Uncle Toby doesn't. Tobody any carry, Toba Shindaji doesn't. Young or dear carry, Tammy charge to us.
So when we talk about the conceptual mind or the awareness of the appearance here, so that appearance of an appearance, that is also existing only independent on another mind. And then that appearance in turn is also again an appearance to another mind. So therefore, there is an infinite regress. One may come to the conclusion that this leads to an infinite regress. Likewise, we talk about something is merely imputed by conceptual consciousness. Well, if something is merely imputed by conceptual consciousness, that imputing conceptual consciousness, that is also merely imputed by another conceptual consciousness. And then that other conceptual consciousness is also merely imputed by another conceptual consciousness. So again, one may have the suspicion, or one have the doubt that therefore one may have the view that there's an infinite regress.
Yana Maragi Lashan and you. That digi do Jane, Pena sends and Big Larsana, Count Chiru Mubu Tamjilo and now some Laro. Lo Horanga race in the young, Lo Shindaji now some Dilana and Tigomara, Lo Hona Temper to Bari. Rangan minute, that Temper to Malana Tigro, the local attempt to Peggy Yandaba Chate.
So now if I answer this, so from the point of view of the Chittamatra school, for example, so when we talk about external phenomena, in the Chittamatra school they say external phenomena are mere appearances to consciousness, or mere appearances to the awareness. And if when they were to ask, well, what about the consciousness itself? Is that not a mere appearance? Well, then the answer is that the consciousness exists truly. It exists truly. It is real. So that would be the response here, so that this infinite regress, that problem does not arise.
The yu kan le shin de insensible de midawa chini. Ko to beta sam de to bo de to beta sam des. Na wa di ko na yu wang yu ba de shi na wa de shida ji le na yu wang yu ba de si di. Da da love to ba che. Ine nam jing si zu kan de ki ji shin de to bo li gi tu na. An ta me ba cha bu da to bo li gi tu na. Di to bo di ta wa de lu to bo ma re.
Ta wa de lu.
To ning gi ko wa de lu to bo ma re. Yu kan de shi jam to ba che. And the Miss Zugan, the Midawa, do not D to the and Tony Quatan to any Tiwamare, D to the Cariton Yungorasena, Nanching Chitam Chichi to Chance, the Lola Mashon Yungor. Dilla and Chunju to Chubi, Kijiton, the Kijish, Najiton, Shevamato, Tony the Teloyamare.
So, with respect to now the Prasangika school, here, not just so the Prasangika system from the point of view of the object, it is merely an appearance, it is merely existing from the perspective of the mind, but even the mind itself, the conceptual consciousness, it is also merely an appearance. Likewise, the appearance, the phenomena exists merely through the power of the appearance, so the force of appearance, then those appearances again are also existing by way of an appearance. So then having this doubt here with regard to the conceptual, with regard to the omniscient consciousness of the Buddha, having this doubt as to the omniscient consciousness of the Buddha, this kind of question that arises here, that arises in dependence or not, or in connection to not understanding emptiness. So the sense that something other needs to, something different needs to appear to the Buddha, that has to do with the omniscient mind of the Buddha, that has to do with the idea that all phenomena here, the Buddha realizes all phenomena, and there is like a spontaneous kind of appearance to the Buddha's consciousness, but that idea is not connected, this view here is not connected to the understanding of emptiness. Tanda condition di karisna tanda kunsobu chue tamche 아니 kunsobu chue tamche 아니 준한 samina 다 다자기도 막 상기기 아니 마음발 킹기여라 마음바에 돌아야 논데샤 토고래 논데가 그런 토고래스라 다 계대견 tum나 sem진시에야 난고다 먹었어 아니 대참 sem진에 난고를 갖다나 마음에 돌아다 좀 킹기여 잔다 마음발에 킹기도 마음바 캔나 다 sem진기야 다 마음에 내주디야 아니 지 가서 주는 사람인고 sem진이 캔고를 대참도 마세 다 주어담부디 디체 아니 주어니바디 가르스나 계대 다자기 덤보다 남긴기 마음바 캔나 다 마음바 탄다 타체잖아요 마음베기 매주 단다시 타체잖아요 타체와 이나 반나는 좀 로한 큐니가 말이야 마음발라 된대차야 한도 로한 요 말이야 담지치 타체와 이나 수술라 로한 다 타체와 로한 큐니 파요 말이야 어디
다 알레
So here the question is, given that the Buddha can only know conventional truth through the minds of sentient beings, how can the Buddha know or predict the future? So does this future also have to appear to sentient beings? And if the Buddha knows the future, is the future fixed or determined? Do we not have, and I added this explanation, does that mean that with respect to the future, everything is determined and we have no freedom, we have no free will with regard to how we act since it's already determined?
And Sanjay Yimahomba Sia di Shanaina, Didinisu di Shanana Borbes, did a Lelawre. Karsana Shanananga, Mahobi Dugi, Kansat Nangri, Sanju Prangi Dusunango Yomaro, Nanginju Natigo, that Itibache.
So with regard to the first part of the question, it's easy to answer with regard to the future, because with regard to the Buddha, the future is realized by the Buddha by way of other induced appearance, in the sense that in the future people will realize the future. So it doesn't have to be now, at the time now, that when the Buddha realizes something now, there needs to be someone who realizes it now. Even if something is realized in the future, that still qualifies for us to say it is an other induced appearance, because the Buddha, what appears to the Buddha now, is that which will appear to sentient beings in the future.
아니 마음베다 마음바 체나 마음바디 땡케바 든지 요르베스 디와디라 디티와디에 다기라바나 신치니 남친기 춘주도 주세 고아데 딱딱말레비 토네 디와디 용고 제가 지시도 남친기 춘주도 주세 고아데 딱딱말레비 봐도 렌디 자바이네 코라 대바 춘칸 맞다.
So with regard to the second question, whether the future is already decided or fixed or determined here, well, this goes down to, as was explained before, not really understanding how the Buddha spontaneously engages in the realization of phenomena. So without that understanding, even if I try to answer this question, it will not become clear. There will not be a sense of understanding. There won't be any understanding of with regard to the answer I give, until one has a sense of a real understanding of how phenomena are spontaneously realized by the Buddha naturally and spontaneously.
딜레 뒤전에 다 마음바나 니치딘지 용그레시에디 용주 땡케바지 땡케르 킹마레 알링엘은 저기 지시와 알레 산지기 점마시와 마음바나 딘지 용그레 용마레 땡케르 킹마레 땡케데요나 산지기 아니 디 임버시그레 아니 디 마임바 땡케데요나 마임버시그레 아니 이 마임 따치리요바 기시께 딘지 테나 용바 켄디 마테나 마용이 니치지요나 산지게 다가랑 시그레 켄디 테나 용그레 켄디 마테나 용마레시 제가 유 가리 유바 다가랑 산지기 시에지 다 춘주도 주고 고아들 레차나 유디 간지지 이내 다가랑 시에지 깨제디 시에온도 있잖아요 산기 켄만 켄랑 주치도 녀라 제 깨제 요만 녀라 디레 마레시에지 녀 디제마다.
So with regard to the future, well, even leaving aside the omniscient mind of the Buddha, even if we leave aside the omniscient mind of the Buddha that realizes the future, the question here is the future fixed or determined? Is it already fixed? Is there going to be a certain situation, one situation that will arise in the future? So if there is, then the Buddha will realize it. If there isn't, the Buddha will not realize it. So in other words, what the Buddha will realize, if those conditions come together, this and this is going to happen. If other conditions come together, or if those conditions do not come together, then this and this will happen. So this the Buddha is aware of. Whatever is the situation in the future with regard to whether these conditions come together or not, or if they do, this will be the result, or this will be the situation. If they do not come together, this will be the situation. So with regard to that, the Buddha realizes. So therefore, if something exists, the Buddha realizes it. And if we have this understanding of the spontaneous kind of engagement, the way the Buddha engages spontaneously into all phenomena, then we understand that whatever it is that is going to happen, the Buddha will realize it. So with that kind of understanding, that will become clear.
진짜 산지기 아니 뒤절래야 아니 마음바나 지나 산지기 되신 룬덴데 요래 진짜 룬덴 나에디 코란페 또바야 레니 만님 주메바 땡킹이 친미 또바신 덴디지 터디 아니 신에 지나 마음비드는 산지기 되신 룬덴도 야 딜레 능세기 딜레야 능세이와 친 따때 체토토 저라 아 마음비드나 로 덴디지 체라 니 지나 산지기 되신 룬덴도 아 미상만도 딜룬덴이 상기롱레스 지용송디 상마 상기롱레스 라마도 이 문제요만.
So when we talk about when we look at the Buddha, for example, so the Buddha, with regard to his disciples, well, the Buddha does make certain prophecies with regard to disciples who have attained a very high level from where there is no coming down, from where there's no more than degeneration. So the expression here, Chunibhavata, which kind of means a sign that they cannot come down from that state. So there's said to be certain states. Having reached those states, one has attained the signs such that one is not able to fall down from them any longer, to those disciples, the Buddha then makes these prophecies, in the future you will become enlightened, in the future you will attain the state of a Buddha. And of those to whom the Buddha makes these prophecies, or with regard to whom the Buddha makes these prophecies, there are also two types. A person who cannot fall down from their realizations, whose realizations cannot degenerate. There are some who have attained a very, very high state. So those who cannot fall down from their realizations and have reached a very, very high state, with regard to those, the Buddha says, in this year, at this time exactly, you will become enlightened, because all the causes and conditions come together. He doesn't say that to us. He doesn't say that to just ordinary people with regard to the exact time living beings become enlightened. So with regard to everyone in general, the Buddha just says everyone is able, everyone is suitable or able to become enlightened.
Isi umei tawa di mangxi是上没把钱，一样几扎的树木，安尼东一样的切对有吧？安尼停这钱呢，我做白切的差别切啦，开始烟下切过的，烟啦umei tawa的定十好钱的讲过的，也没那烟啦卡多减送吧的小工切让他个人停这小工切过的。开始较多停在减送给小工人性停在切吧，那你屋内切对元素切对看这切过的，比较像那推出人单干嘛种啊，因为那从我妈来拍就看见的较多停在公吧人呐，俺这当切路看这切路切到身上跟小工停在看这切路里面的可能的送什么，那样元素切被告诉推出的水果的。因为那推水呢，安尼感觉种啊要产呢，大家人马拍的，因为那生人好啦，从那这马来拍到木头呢，开始切过来，开始切过来。
So I think your question is Geshe-la talked about with regard to the study and the practice of Madhyamika. So kind of how to actually go about this kind of should one study first, or if one doesn't really engage in study to such a degree, but rather one starts practicing right away, should one do the kind of meditation or kind of analytical meditation and focus on the object first? What is it one should do first? How long should one meditate? Meditate until there's a certain feeling, to 15 minutes or not, and so forth. So she just kind of gave different possibilities with regard to how one should go about it, how one should go about meditation on emptiness in order to make the meditation towards it.
这个在执行面上面，我应该怎么做呢？
那你等不等于给这个给明的，你个钱的这个意了。샤롬 디테테 체오레 야 우메숑의 장고레스 답답하게 계속하면 네가 제일 되게 많았어.
Meditating, just focusing on the emptiness and learning about the Madhyamika. Well, we don't need to choose one over the other. Both are good. We should be doing both. We should engage both in that kind of meditation as well as in learning about the Madhyamika view.
지단 나중에 장년지나 비다고 정도 용의지나 직장 뒤지지 않고 디니 순제진을 좋아이나 and 편도 친구를 단 위다고지 용투에기다 레와 친구여.
So someone who has the wish to really study Buddhism well, to have a kind of excellent or a good quality kind of experience here, well, one should make some time for study and one should make some time for meditation. If one is able to combine those two, one will get a good result. One will get a positive type of result. So studying and meditating, keeping time for both, or making time for both.
老庄嘛些吧就空白呢，对他不就用来考不了，定时不记得，什么过去学清不贴记得，家清不记得，等这就用来考不起来了。
So without studying, without kind of understanding, without learning about something, so without that, just meditating, one will not be able to go deeply or have a vast kind of understanding or a vast or deep kind of experience. That will be impossible without learning about what to meditate on.
양 바기 롭종 짱짱 칸다 친 코메디는 도나춘이 마제바이나 리직라 가르스부리 무지 바기 디월레데들 먹고요. 샘팅네 레기 디와지 야치당 레기 디와지 디나 신신 고야들레 예버도 신 고야들레 단다 남상 신 고야 리직 조보조보 양 갈리레 신네 디게 리직 디르지 먹고지요. 딜레데 아니 디즈 요춘이 메와체 아니 참참다 아니 단다 남상 신에 메딩에다 단 갈라오다 하정기 편도 신부시라 메딩에다 딘디기 먹고지라 아니 도나테제 아니 신주르지 제니 지 디즈 먹고지 졸라져야 니가 요되어지 차대요. 지산다 공기 체니 아니 로전 지기 제바이나 권변 내가수 다 제공원에 제바이나 뒤와 무슨 얘기로 뒤와는 나로는 얘기로 뒤와디 실을 숨이 터네 로전 지디잖아요. 아니 로전 그 터네 뒤와디 레자야다 답시 디체온도 있잖아요. 아니 로전디야 비다보지 다다 갈라올까 지단 로전 가르치는 야고들에데 먼저 있는 딜레다 나사 가리는 디토를 따다 팬딩이지 메디 메신다 유나 야고여와 제법 먹어보는 나는 비지 당초그래 미신다 나는 대초그래 참 유나 야고래데 아니 참모 마중이 버데라 니라 아니 너무 여화코아데 수수강에 가리도네 딜레파에 메지 걸었다 저기 차수 수요시 담보 제가 어딘지기 다 랍시마스 어딘지요
And the teaching so but only studying without meditating, that is again another problem, another fault here. So sometimes when a question is kind of is set forth, someone asks a question, for example, so there are kinds of questions that come from the depth of one's heart, and they come in kind of general. So when someone asks a question, there are these questions that come from the depth of one's heart, and there are these kind of general types of questions. So in other words, there are questions where one needs to immediately have an answer. There's a very strong sense that I need to immediately have an answer, and then there are these questions which can wait. So whether you get the answer or not, there's not such urgency. So with regard to that, we need to differentiate between those two. So if now with regard to something like when we study about something and we do not meditate on that, so without that, then there will be questions that we will not go into great detail with regard to those, and it's not that beneficial therefore, because they're just kind of general questions without any connection to one's own kind of experience. Whereas on the other hand, when one meditates and studies at the same time, if one combines those two, then there's the questions that one have, they relate directly to one's own kind of experience. So those are questions with regard to one's own understanding. So then the quality of one's study will be much better. Why? Because there's this sense of urgency, there's like a feeling that comes along with that, and one's study will be directed towards gaining an understanding now of this particular point. So this is much better to have that kind of direct kind of looking at phenomena or looking at the subject that one studies and trying to relate them back to one's individual kind of experiences in that moment. That is much more beneficial. Of course, we can also talk about study being similar to accumulating medicine. Now, we can accumulate a lot of different medicine. So thinking, okay, so right now I don't have this particular disease, so right now this is not beneficial to me, but maybe in the future it will be beneficial. Or I can give this to others, I can give this medicine to others. So likewise, when we study in such a way that one studies all sorts of different situations that one personally has no real relationship to. And of course, Geshe-la is saying actually we say study in general is good. Study in general is good to learn about things, it is beneficial. But really the best type of study is until we can really benefit others in a specific way, in a very effective way, until that time we don't need to learn about everything, but rather make sure that we study in a way that is most beneficial to our own practice, so to understand those points that are relevant to us at a specific moment in time with regard to our own practice.
And teacher dawa kashi komsa vichile yanju beje de lodi shin saba ke mene surwachi legidus trowachi yongudus tindi lagido.
So some people say that when they read the scriptures, so when they read the scriptures that they're not meditating on, so then they read through the scriptures and there's a certain understanding, they understand everything what is said in the scriptures, and then if they look at these scriptures again, then without there be after a few months, so after a few months, if they look at the same text again, even though there's no new knowledge, not knowledge as such that they gain, but there's a new feeling that arises. So some people say a new feeling arises as a result of after a few months reading the same text again.
아니 돈이 고아디 알링에라 다부지 메네 빠쇠지기 차이나 다가를 검는 되기래 검제다 용한테스 되이나 다 니마지라 아니 갈라오라 지베잖아라이나 튠시 튠주 이렇게 지시고 니마지라 차시 차르주 기제든 시거 아니 베게 제르무시 송지나로라 아니 니마지라 차르 주딘의 마마 마시스 망다나 아니 비다고 잘 말했어 제르무시 송지요 디나로라 니마지라 주딘의 마마 마시스 망다는 기여스 데리어
So with respect to meditating on, for those who have some understanding of emptiness, well, they should try to get a little understanding of emptiness and then debate a little bit, meditate a little bit. So in order to get some kind of experience, so to spend a little bit of time on gaining some kind of experience. So first of all, trying to develop some kind of experience, and then meditating on that, generating, furthering one's understanding. So gaining a little understanding, therefore, by studying, whatever kind of feeling, whatever experience one has, one should then meditate on that. So doing that like 4 times a day, or maybe 6 times a day. So Geshe-la talked about meditative sessions, so doing it 4 times a day or 6 times a day. But in one of the scriptures by Lama Tsongkhapa, he's saying that one could do it up to 17 times, 17 kind of sessions of meditating on something, but one should not do it more than 17 times. Because if one has these meditative, if one in one day has more than 17 sessions of meditation, then the quality of one's meditation will suffer. So one will not be able to have a kind of a qualitative kind of meditation. So having reached an understanding, therefore, so she asked the question.
답변은 튠시 대바이나 파고도 레당보아이나 안에 가만 유슈 추체가스 추체가스 전에 이마지라다 추지 가서 추지 니르와 인디 버자다들이야 로그로그지 신사교인의 디고 콜로다야 디슈치 테그리 하고 거네들.
So here, I didn't catch everything because I was speaking in the meantime, but anyway, so in essence, so she asked about, does one have to study first and then kind of meditate on that, or how to actually do this? So Geshe-la's response was, well, actually first one should get an understanding of the text, one get an understanding of the emptiness as it is explained in the scripture. One first needs to do that, get some sense of what the scripture are talking about, and then to really get an experience, then to actually have an experience come forth, one should also meditate. So to cultivate a certain experience, then one really needs to meditate, and one could do this, for example, like how many times a day she asked, do you really need to go into retreat and only meditate on emptiness? And Geshe-la's response was, no, you can do it 4 times a day, you can make time 4 times a day, let's say 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and altogether it becomes 2 hours. You only meditate for 2 hours every day. So the rest of the time you spend reading the scriptures, meditating, get an understanding, deepen your understanding of the topic, get a better understanding of the topic. So therefore you can sort of divide the day up into different sessions that you meditate and other ones you
디지 뒤전에 가수래 다 기시 뒤지 되는 맹이나 뒤지 되는 맹이나 다니 뭐지래 주스 제가 근도 제대해서로 양 디디 진행지인의 로차장의 제도에 미디 더 지스체 중재시라 마테 양 잠샤 양 디제라 양 다와지니지 참나신진데 중재 마테 잠샤 디디 제가 있는 디 중재 무수도 보면 퇴는마도 니버지 파기 주대요 레레서 당도 야가 두가 섬로 야가 두가 간디지인의 코 친제 다 등상을 hin다는 레벨이 교회를 땅대다 다 교회 무수도 퇴마 된지 여러 지선 다 가시 된지요 배기 참대 아니 다와 가시 때 중재 마테냐 디제를 다와 참 되어마시 양 배제지 로양 다 로마부 제라 아니마지 배제 사우지라지 안티 뭐네 디게 아니 쉬우지 팬지 니만이 배제디 라요는 다 내가 쉬우지 배레라고 용서요 디디 징거 초래 그러나 디갈레 디자면은 니만 디라로 표도시요 그래서 카드기 책이 깨는지 못한 거다 맞아 저야 퀄리티 용해디 니만이 갈레 잡대 디 슈긴 대결어 띵만지 신고다
So now if you are someone who doesn't have much time, if one doesn't really have the time to spend much time here, or to spend a lot of time meditating, well, then one could do a meditation every day for only 30 minutes. So to meditate for 30 minutes. If again there is no time to do that, then maybe one may take some time, one could create some time such as a month and stay in retreat for 1 month. And then if there is no real result, well, one may not actually have a certain result. One may come out of the retreat without feeling there has been any change. But actually there is a kind of potential. There's nonetheless, it feels that way. It feels that way as if there was no result. But actually, no matter what the experience is during this 1 month, whatever good thoughts or negative thoughts, all this is beneficial. There's definitely some change. And if we speak about it in modern terms, the brain definitely changes. The brain is definitely transformed during this 1 month. And there are some people who go into retreat. So for 1 month they go into retreat. When they come out of the retreat, they feel there's not really been any change. And then they go into retreat again, and they stay in retreat for a month, and then they come out again, and then again they do, and there's no real change. They don't feel there's been any change. And then there's some time in between they do other things, and for a few months or whatever, and again they go into retreat, and again they come out, and they don't feel there's any kind of change. And after these different intermittent periods, like having gone into retreat, but not feeling there's any result, there's no real, they have not actually changed, or there has not been any transformation, or nothing has really happened, then they come across a scripture, they look at the scripture and they go, oh, now I understand this is this. There's a great feeling, there's like a real sense of understanding. And what they then mistakenly think is that, oh, I didn't have to do all that practice for all this month. If I had just gotten the scripture right from the beginning, I could have gotten that experience. But Geshe is saying this is totally wrong, because it is the force of these different, it is through the force, it's through the power of these different meditative retreats that the person did. So even though the change was not obvious to them, and all those led to eventually the state when you now look at the scripture, and you gain a certain understanding, there's a certain feeling. If the person hadn't done these different retreats, even if they had gotten this scripture early on, that kind of experience would have been impossible. So it's the coming together of these periods of time when they meditated that then, as a condition of encountering this text, they had that special experience.
And健康中有恰恰，但个比居嘛近嘛恰恰，但第二对年纪跟度假都是，要我们对家长的要我接受嘛的老外呢，那跟他对嘛的路人，靠的的人生嘛的，那边第二个人的，因为年纪这的些位建议推荐。定期去查呢，把这拍个这你不是来查他，上面去打查他。
So Geshe was saying those 2 months in the front, they have a very good relationship. So I kind of looked a little questioning at him, and he said, well, let's assume they have a very good relationship. Anyway, so he's saying, let's say they have a really good relationship, so they really trust one another. And if so, they have this very good relationship. So let's say I come as an ordinary person, and I say something to one of the Gennas, that the other Genna is not a good person, you know, in the future he will harm you, he will deceive you, and so forth. Then the Genna to whom I say it will get angry because he's good friends with this other Genna. However, in the back of his mind there will be an imprint left. Somehow there'll be something left. I've kind of said that. So therefore some residue will be there, some imprint will be left there.
This seven TV ta kare yoresena. In teacher la mi shadaji ya ta lava ina. And tagina shina margmar. Inji mare se. There's my shucha.
So how do I know that there was an imprint there? Is that if another person then says the same thing, again this other person will deceive you and so forth, the reaction will be not as strong as upon hearing it for the first time. So it'll be less kind of like, oh, that's probably not true. So instead of getting really angry, then the Genna will then therefore react rather like, oh, that's probably not the case.
So if one
person says the same thing, then the Genna will think, oh, how strange. This is strange.
And then the Nijiwa and Namjina, those turning Kisi and Kadu Kaja machine in Tendana, Yakom and Thomas Soma to Kayomaro. That did not load this way, said you, and that is in service. Kindichi can't say more.
So then, now after that, after these three people have said something, now the other Genna walks past the first Genna without greeting him. Well, if he hadn't heard all these stories before, he would have just thought, oh, he just didn't see me. But because of these three people having already said something, then the kind of suspicion arises, oh, he just ignored me right now, he didn't look at me on purpose.
Chik Teni, Dici Bachasha, the Shukin Tail, that Dici to Ni to and a Tobachi lay, and some Lucy down, or do Chidi, and remain the children, and you wanted to ski Gorba.
So this is the case with like more negative kind of situations. This is also true from the point of view of positive situations, that hearing something again and again, or going over something again and again, it influences, it serves as an influencing kind of condition, or a condition that affects us in a certain way. If one hears about something again and again, then one has questions, one eliminates these questions, one gets an answer, one again thinks about it, learns about it. So then one's experience will grow stronger and stronger.
Jizanta nyamnyong ten rangi thone ane sambat tindi tenyer yuding na tindi ina yang the la ya nyobe che yo mar. Bichi chiba ina yang loye le nyobe yo mar. Ta tindi ma yin ba che kashi nizu saba shin sam tendu nying tindi ina an beje de lo an chen sana yang yo lo de ko saba me na an lo de yo mar. Bichi ji tho an di nye yang yo de saba le mi du na nye de yo mar. 다 벽에 딘지기 셈나로라 봐서 투루 땅네 아니 야산지 세기 딘지기 삼로 여딩이디 아니 양내 양도 nye 양내 양도 로 아니 양내 양도 곰 딜이야 당시에 메딩이지 저는 라버도 봄도스에 다가라래 셈나야도 샤예치들에 마도 셰수메 타메 따뜻해 저번에도 싫은 것도 어즈다 봄도스에 슈구슈구 하라든지 여다베 숨메 타메 티메 근데 나고야도 아니 미치 라벨라바나시 고메 라시는 다가라스 대가라로 왔다 사바 스페이스미나 이 근데 많이 받지네 아니 어서 수템을 주고 친구를 나와 때만 주고 친구를 친구들이 로생기를 여디 아니 수메 타메를 저는 아사미 디양네 양도 디용거로
So now, for someone who wants experience, who really aspires, who really strives to having some kind of experience, well, they will again and again listen to teachings, even if it's the same text. They will repeatedly, again and again, listen to the same text. So it doesn't matter even if it's the same scripture. There's no getting tired of that. Whereas there are other people who are just interested in hearing new situations and getting more information. For those who want more information, new information, want to just add to the kind of things they know, they will not receive the same teachings again and again. So they will not read the same text again. It's like, oh, I read this one before. Okay, well, this one I want something else. I want something new now. Whereas a person who wants to really get an experience, they understand that their imprints get stronger and stronger. So that if they listen to something again and again, so then these imprints become stronger. They get new experience every time. So when they listen again, it's not about information, but about a new feeling. Every time a new feeling is generated upon hearing the same thing again. And in that way, slowly, they will become fully enlightened. They strive towards adding these imprints onto their understandings, like imprints of the understandings, and when they become stronger, to then eventually become fully enlightened. So, therefore, they go over the same teachings again and again. If that wasn't the case, if there wasn't something very specific, if this kind of repetition didn't have a very specific purpose, then there would be no real benefit reading, for example, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra of 100,000 stanzas, where it says there is no eye, there is no ear, there is no nose, there is no mouth, there is no this, there is no that. It's a bit like, why would you say that? I mean, it's better in a Heart Sutra, where you have like just a small list of things that are not there, that are not there, that are not there. But with 100,000 stanzas, there are pages and pages of things. There's not this, there's not that, there's not this, there's not this. Then instead of saying there's no eye, no ear, no nose, you could just say there's no head. Same idea, you know, if you have no ear, no nose, and so forth, that would mean there's no head either. But this is not the purpose here. The purpose is not to understand that, but it's like every time you hear again and again, there's no eye, there's no ear, there's no nose, there's no mouth, it means there is no, it talks about the lack of existence of these phenomena, or the way of existence. It talks about how phenomena really exist, and by repeatedly hearing this again and again, one's understanding goes deeper and becomes stronger.
인디기 고아유에 딩기 주심버지기에는 시에다 기나야산 미수토네 기나야산 얘기를 마야산 얘기를 어서 참아 마음은 산지로레스 산지로레스 시에데 수토네 인디 고아유에 딩기 주심버지.
So someone who has that understanding, a bodhisattva who has that understanding, will say, I will become enlightened in the future, you will become enlightened in the future, you all have the potential to become enlightened in the future. So this is like, with this understanding, well, out of this understanding, a bodhisattva will basically go around and tell everyone they become So therefore, with this understanding, even if someone gets angry with them, they have this strong sense that this person will become enlightened. Even if someone walks somewhere far away, you also become enlightened. So this sense of like wanting to communicate that is out of that understanding. So even if someone throws a stone at them, you're trying to get away, but at the same time you're still thinking this person will become enlightened. So if there are more questions, let's have another session tomorrow with question and answers. So then you're welcome to ask your questions. Maybe put them in writing, and please give them to me in writing so I can read them tomorrow. Any questions?
Thank you.